You are doing this wrong, not you specifically. Every parent alive today, every child being raised right now. For 300,000 years, no child on Earth was ever raised by two people, not one. And what happened when we replaced the village with the nuclear family will change everything you think you know about childhood and about why so many children today are struggling in ways their great-grandparents never did. In 1975, anthropologist Melvin Konner at Emory University began one of the longest studies ever conducted on how hunter-gatherer societies raise children. He spent years with the Kungsan people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living something close to the original human lifestyle. And what he found stopped him completely. A Kung child was never alone. From birth, they were held, carried, or within arm's reach of another human being for virtually every waking hour of the day. Not just the mother, not just the parents, everyone. Aunts, uncles, older children, grandparents, neighbors. The entire group of 150 people functioned as a single collective parent. By the time a Kung child was 3 years old, they had been held by an average of 14 different adults on any given day. 14. Your child, or you, when you were a child, was held by how many? But here's what makes this stranger. The Kung didn't schedule this, they didn't coordinate it, there were no play dates, no childcare rosters, no systems. It just happened. Because for 300,000 years, a child's cry was everyone's problem, not the parents' problem. Everyone's. Sarah Blaffer, Hrdy at the University of California, Davis, spent decades researching what she called cooperative breeding, the idea that humans are the only great ape that evolved to raise children collectively. Her 2009 book, Mothers and Others, documented something extraordinary. Chimpanzees, our closest relatives, never share childcare. A chimpanzee mother raises her infant alone. No aunts, no grandmothers, no group involvement. Humans are completely different. We evolved, Hrdy argued, specifically to need other people to raise our children. The grandmother who lives nearby, the older sibling who teaches by example, the neighbor who steps in when the parents are exhausted. These aren't modern conveniences, they're biological necessities. And here's the number that makes this real. In 1900, the average American child had 4.7 people living in or regularly present in their household beyond their parents. Today, that number is 0.4. You probably work twice what your ancestors did. You also raise your children with a fraction of the support they had. Now, here's the part nobody talks about. In the original human environment, children didn't go to school. They learned by watching, by doing, by being embedded in the full complexity of adult life from the moment they could walk. A 5-year-old in a hunter-gatherer society watched adults hunt, cook, negotiate, grieve, celebrate, resolve conflicts, and make decisions all in a single day. They were never separated from the adult world and placed in a room with 30 other children their exact age, expected to learn from someone they'd known for 3 weeks. In 2015, anthropologist David Lancy at Utah State University published research on what he called the LOPI model, learning by observing and pitching in. In virtually every traditional society he studied, children learned not through instruction, but through participation. They weren't taught, they watched until they were ready, then they did. A child who wanted to learn to make a spear didn't sit in a class. They sat beside the person making spears until they understood. Then they tried. Then they were corrected by watching, not by being told. Lancy found that formal instruction, an adult explaining something to a child who isn't yet doing it, is almost entirely absent in traditional societies. We invented it. And here's what that cost us. Children raised in the LOPI model showed significantly lower rates of anxiety around failure because they had never been graded, never been told they were wrong in front of peers, never been separated from the adults they were learning from. They failed constantly at hunting, at fire making, at climbing, but they failed in context with people who expected them to fail and kept going anyway. Think about the last time a child you know cried about school, about a grade, about not being good enough. That specific anxiety, the performance anxiety of childhood, is a recent invention. It didn't exist for 300,000 years. But there's something even stranger, and it involves what happened to children at night. For most of human history, children never slept alone, not once, not for a single night of their childhood. They slept in physical contact with their mother, their father, other family members, sometimes the entire group, in a warm pile of bodies around a fire. The idea of putting a child in a separate room, in a separate bed, in the dark, and expecting them to fall asleep alone, that concept didn't exist until the 19th century. Anthropologist James McKenna at the University of Notre Dame published research showing that human infants are biologically designed to sleep next to their mothers. They're breathing their heart rate, their sleep cycles, all of it is regulated by proximity to another body. When separated, infant cortisol levels spike within minutes. Their nervous system doesn't understand what's happening. It has one interpretation for being alone in the dark, danger. For 300,000 years, being alone in the dark meant you had been separated from the group. It meant you might die. Your child's nervous system doesn't know they're in a safe bedroom, in a house with two loving parents nearby. It knows it's alone, and it panics accordingly. And here's what that looks like in practice today. The average American mother spends about 13 hours per week in direct child care. That sounds like a lot. It's more than any previous generation of mothers in recorded history. But for 300,000 years, childcare wasn't something you did for 13 hours a week. It was something 150 people did continuously, around the clock, distributed across the entire group. The mother wasn't responsible for 100% of the child's emotional regulation. She was responsible for maybe 10%. The rest was absorbed by the village. Today, there is no village. There are two parents, often one, sometimes none, nearby, who knew the child before they were born. And the weight of what 150 people used to share now falls on the shoulders of people who are already working more hours than any human being in history. Now, here's what changed and what most people never think about. The nuclear family didn't exist for most of human history. It was invented deliberately. In the 18th and 19th centuries, as industrialization pulled families into cities and separated them from their extended networks, a new ideology emerged. The idea that the family unit of two parents and their children was natural, sufficient, and ideal. It wasn't. It had never existed at that scale before, and children paid the price. Rates of childhood anxiety began rising almost immediately after the Industrial Revolution separated children from the village structures that had supported them for 300,000 years. Today, 1 in 5 children in the developed world meets the criteria for an anxiety disorder. That number was essentially unmeasurable in traditional societies, not because traditional life was easy, it was brutal, but because a child surrounded by 150 people who knew them, expected them to fail, helped them try again, and never left them alone at night. That child knew, at a level deeper than thought, that they were not alone. So here's where you are now. If you have children, you are doing something no human being was ever designed to do. You are raising them with almost no help in a house that empties during the day, with children their exact age rather than a mix of ages that taught them naturally, with a school system that grades and separates and instructs rather than one that includes and observes and participates. Your children are not broken. They are not a generation of anxious, overwhelmed, screen-addicted failures. They are the first generation in 300,000 years being raised without a village, and they are responding exactly the way a human child responds when the village disappears. We traded 150 people who knew your child for 2 parents who are exhausted. We traded learning by doing for learning by being told. We traded a pile of warm bodies at night for a bedroom and a night light. We called it progress. Most of us never questioned it. If this changed how you see yourself, subscribe. That's exactly what this channel is about.